Hey everyone, this is Nishat and welcome back to my channel. I hope you all are doing very good and I believe that all of you are very safe and sound. So in today's video, I'm going to review about Jane Eyre. It's a book that was written by Charlotte Bronte in the Victorian age, and basically I'm going to divide this video into two parts. In today's video, I'm going to talk about the basic plot and character analysis and other aspects related to the book. While in my next video, I'll be talking about why do I believe that you should definitely read Jane Eyre. So without any further ado, let's get into the video. So basically, Jane Eyre is a story that is about a girl named Jane Eyre, and it's about her life journey from the very beginning of her existence to her adulthood. So when we read the novel, we find that it has been divided into three parts, even though ऐसा कोई मेंशन नहीं है कि हाँ सेक्शन वाइज डिवाइड किया गया है, बट व्हेन यू रीड द स्टोरी वुड फाइंड दैट वी आर रीडिंग एज इफ थ्री पार्ट्स ऑफ अर लाइफ और थ्री बेसिक एजेस ऑफ अर लाइफ. So the first part is about like for the first 10 years of her existence, then comes her teenage age, and lastly comes the adult age. And Jane Eyre is a story that is, a classical story or a classic story. Classic basically, I'm sorry. So why is it so? It's because obviously it became a popular book when it came out. जब ये publish हुआ था, it was a super duper what to say, it was like selling like hotcakes. But in today's age, like after 200 years also, Jane Eyre is a success and people just love to read it. People from any age group, people belonging from any age group, from any kind of society or any kind of generation, just fall in love while they're reading this book. And it's particularly because of the fact कि जेन एयर के जो प्रोटैगनिस्ट है, मतलब जो हीरोइन है जेन एयर, along with the story it kind of resembles to us. We are able to connect with it and it's very heart-wrenching. It's the story of a girl who has been through a lot of things. Jane Eyre की जो story है, it's a struggle of a girl who is finding her identity in society, and it's like kind of relates to as I said that the story is divided into three basic parts, where we find that Jane has been shown struggling at the basic three parts of her life, the three ages. मतलब उसका जो struggle था, it started from the very beginning of her life. So it's very heart wrenching, मतलब emotional है, क्योंकि हम देखते हैं एक बच्ची struggle करती है, and that's why I believe people are able to relate with it. Another aspect why I believe is like people are able to relate with it and why is it so famous is the fact कि Jane Eyre is a replica of Victorian age, जिसके बारे में मैं इसके मतलब I'll be talking about it in the next video. It's a replica means it very brilliantly portrays all of those problems, basic problems, the social problems, economical problems and class problems that existed in the Victorian age. So it is kind of concerning and covering every problem of Victorian age, and that's why it became a popular book back then in Victorian age, because people were able to relate with it, right? So it's just a gorgeous book. It's just a very good book, and I use the term gorgeous because its content is beautiful and it's very sparkly. Even though it's heart-wrenching, it's very sparkly and very beautiful. Talking about the basic plot of the story, it's the story of a girl named Jane Eyre, who becomes an orphan at a very tender age. Like after 2 to 3 months of her birth, she becomes an orphan, and then she gets adopted by her maternal uncle, Mr. Reed, who is actually her mother's brother, means her mother's sibling. But Mr. Reed also dies in 1 to 2 years, and later on she becomes the responsibility of Mrs. Reed, who is the wife of Mr. Reed. अब ये जो सारे लोग, मतलब मिसेस रीड, मिस्टर रीड जिस जगह पे रहते थे उस जगह का नाम था गेटसेट हॉल. नाउ जेन हैज़ हर कजन्स, मीन्स चिल्ड्रन ऑफ मिसेस रीड, बट she never felt that love and affection from them. In fact, Mrs. Reed was a very authoritative, tyrannical woman who loved to exercise her will on Jane. And she didn't love Jane, I would say. She didn't like her. Maybe because of the fact that she belonged from, like, her father was just a clergyman, मतलब जो church में काम करते थे. So she didn't love her, she didn't like her, in fact. So we find that Mrs. Reed was always this very cold towards Jane. And सिर्फ यही नहीं, हम देखते हैं कि मिसेज रीड के जो बच्चे थे, मतलब जेन के जो कज़न, वो भी जेन से बहुत बुरा व्यवहार करते थे. एंड दे ऑल्सो यूज टू maltreat her a lot. And Jane's life was truly miserable. So basically I'm talking about the first 10 years of her life, जब हम देखते that her life is truly very miserable and she is denied of love, affection at a point of her time when she needed all of them the most. But obviously a change takes place in her life. At the age of 8, she gets the opportunity to study in school. So she goes to school, and the name of the very school is Lowood Institution. Jane however thinks that her life would change. Jane ये समझती है और सोचती है कि शायद उसका जो लाइफ है वो चेंज होने वाले है आफ्टर शी गेट्स enrolled in a school. Obviously जब वो स्कूल में जाएगी then she would get education and that would actually help her in a later life. But education तो दूर की बात, that was a much उसके बारे में बाद में बात करते हैं. बट जेन जैसा सोच रही थी कि उसका लाइफ, मतलब उसकी जो लाइफ है वो चेंज होने वाली है आफ्टर शी गेट्स इनटू Lowood Institution, that was not the case. The moment when she gets there, she finds that it was not a place which was meant for her, maybe because it was highly strict and it was basically a स्कूल फॉर ऑर्फन गर्ल्स. मतलब जो भी पोअर ऑर्फन गर्ल्स थी उनके लिए एक स्कूल बना गया था. बट ये जो स्कूल के जो रूल्स एंड रेगुलेशंस थे वो बहुत ही स्ट्रिक्ट थे और एक काइंड ऑफ किसी भी बच्चे को लिमिट करते थे. मतलब उनको कोई लिबर्टी नहीं थी दैट दे कुड प्ले, दे कुड एन्जॉय. It was truly very strict. So again it seemed as if Jane was going to another imprisonment. She came out from one imprisonment and she get into another imprisonment. उसके बाद हम देखते हैं कि लोवुड इंस्टीट्यूशन एक ऐसी जगह थी जहाँ पर ठीक तरह से खाना नहीं मिलता था. लाइक यहाँ पर खाना, मतलब देयर वाज लिमिटेशन ऑफ फूड एंड मोस्ट ऑफ द गर्ल्स दे हैड टू स्टार्व. ऑल्सो द सैनिटेशन वाज वेरी पोअर एंड most of the time they used to get diseases because of the poor sanitation. So ये सारे problems वहाँ की लड़कियाँ face कर रही थी along with Jane. Now Jane becomes friend with one of the girls named Helen Burns, who becomes her closest friend. But we find that Helen Burns dies in the story and it was basically about it was basically because of the typhus fever. So जब ये story लिखा गया था तब इंग्लैंड में टाइफस फीवर, मतलब टाइफॉइड से जो फीवर होता है, इट वॉज़ वेरी प्रिविलेंट एंड इट वॉज़ वेरी वाइड स्प्रेड. सो इस स्टोरी में भी हम देखते हैं कि लोवुड इंस्टीट्यूशन में काइंड ऑफ टाइफॉइड फीवर फैल जाता है. उसकी वजह से हेलन बर्न्स मर जाती है एंड आफ्टर द डेथ ऑफ हेलन बर्न्स जेन अगेन बिकम्स वेरी लोनली, मे बी बिकॉज ऑफ द फैक्ट दैट शी हैड नो वन एक्सेप्ट हेलन बर्न्स. उसके जो रिलेशंस थे वो उनके बारे, मतलब उसके बारे में कभी पूछते भी नहीं थे. And all she had was Helen Burns. Okay, so as time passes, Jane becomes a good student. She emerges as one of the good, best students of Lowood Institution, and after a gap of 6 years, she becomes the teacher. So previously she was a pupil, a student in Lowood Institution, and later on she becomes a teacher. And it was nearly at the age of 18 when she becomes a teacher. But at the age of 18, after becoming a teacher, she felt as if she needs a change in her life. She needs to see the world a bit more, and therefore she decided that she would go for another job. She would opt for another job. And basically what she searched for was the job of a governess. Now this job of a governess has a great role to play, and it was basically one of the greatest factors ruling in Victorian age society. And I'll be talking about this in the next video. Let me just finish off with the plot. So it was the job of a governess that she was looking out, and finally she got it. She got the job of a governess at a place named Thornfield Hall, and the name of her pupil was Adele Verets. अब जेन थॉर्नफील्ड हॉल जाती है. अब थॉर्नफील्ड हॉल जाके उसका जो लाइफ है, मतलब उसकी लाइफ पूरी तरह से चेंज होने वाली है. यू कैन से दैट इट्स अ turning point of her life when she would find love, she would find someone who would love her the way that she has never been loved in her entire life. And it's the turning point, like it's the most beautiful part of the story, the entire part starting from a journey in Thornfield to the end. And it's like the most what to say, heart-wrenching, kind of emotional part of Jane's life as well. सो हम देखते हैं कि थॉर्नफील्ड हॉल एक ऐसी जगह है, इट्स लाइक टोटली हॉन्टेड काइंड ऑफ प्लेस. मतलब एक ऐसी जगह पे सिचुएटेड है विच इज़ वेरी डेजर्टेड एंड one could hear strange laughters in this very place, in this very palace at night. And Jane found this place to be very typical, peculiar, because उसको पता नहीं था कि ये जो हंसने की आवाज़ है ये किसकी है, मतलब एक कोई इंसान की है या फिर कोई भूत प्रेत का मतलब अड्डा है. So she was not able to find out. Now comes the moment when she meets the owner of Thornfield Hall, who is Mr. Rochester, Mr. Edward Fairfax Rochester. Now, this is the very person with whom she would fall in love, and Mr. Rochester would also fall in love with Jane, irrespective of the fact that Jane was just a governess while Mr. Rochester was an aristocrat. Again, I'll be talking about this in the next part because class difference, as I said, it's very beautifully portrayed in the entire story. So they fall in love with each other and they decide to marry each other. On the very day of the marriage, something happens, something truly bad and worse happens, because of which they couldn't marry, and Jane decides to leave Rochester and go away from him. But at the end of the story, we find out that she comes back to live with Rochester. Now, अब Jane के साथ क्या हुआ और उनकी शादी क्यों नहीं हो पाई, why she goes and she returns back, all these things you would have to learn after reading the story, because अगर मैं बोल देती हूँ then it would be a complete spoiler. So that was all about the plot of Jane Eyre. Now, talking about character analysis, I would say that all of the characters are very beautiful and all of the characters are perfect in their own light, but there are two basic characters who stand out the most. Obviously, they are Jane and Mr. Rochester. It's because ये जो दोनों कैरेक्टर है एक दूसरे से बहुत ज़्यादा अलग है, बट irrespective of the fact that they are different from each other, they fall in love. और इन लोगों के जो स्ट्रगल्स है वो भी बहुत डिफरेंट है. इन लोगों में एक एज डिफरेंस है विच इज़ बेसिकली अबाउट 20 years of age difference. Jane was only 18 years while Edward Rochester was 35 years old. But why do you think Jane fell in love with Mr. Rochester? It was because of his characteristic traits, and that was the same for Rochester as well. He fell in love with Jane because of her character. So as a character हम देखते हैं कि Jane is a very brilliant character जो जानती है कि अपने situation को कैसे ठीक करना है. From the very tender age, as I said, that she was denied love, and that used to drive her crazy. Like, why should she be denied of love? And therefore she was revolting. बचपन से उसका रिवोल्ट करने का बहुत मन था, बट और करती भी थी, बट शी वॉज सप्रेस्ड. Her emotions, her feelings were suppressed. But as time goes by, we find that Jane becomes a very serene character. वो मतलब एक spirituality आती है उसमें, इसकी वजह से वो रिवॉल्टिंग से बहुत एक सीरीन ट्रैंक्विल कैरेक्टर हो जाती है जो कि बहुत कैलकुलेटिव है. एंड शी नाउ नोज हाउ टू टैकल एवरी सिचुएशन विद काम एंड पोइस without being angry and frustrated. Also, we find that Jane is a very emancipated woman who believes in her own self, who believes that she should, feed herself and sustain herself on her own will. And Jane is not beautiful. In the entire story, we would find that Jane herself also says that she is not beautiful. She is petite, मतलब वो short height की है. But irrespective of the fact that she is not beautiful, she is petite, she is a strong character and she has good will, good personality, which makes her a beautiful character. On the other hand, we find Mr. Rochester is a very lively character. Mr. Rochester भी उतने handsome नहीं है, and he is 35 years of age, but he's a very lively character who knows how to make people laugh, who knows how to get along with people and who knows how to cope up with different situations in life. Even though he's very haughty and short tempered, but he is nevertheless a very good character. Now जेन की तरह भी इन्होंने बहुत ज़्यादा स्ट्रगल किया है. इनके स्ट्रगल के बारे में मैं अभी नहीं बताने वाली हूँ. that you would come to know when you would read the story. But इतना जान लो कि मिस्टर रॉचेस्टर भी अंदर अंदर किसी चीज़ के लिए घूट रहे थे. मतलब कोई चीज़ उनको खाई जा रही थी. एंड it's very struggling, like his life was also filled with a lot of struggles and experiences. बेसिकली हम देखते हैं कि ये जो स्टोरी है 3 जॉनर में आती है, विच इज़ द गॉथिक, सेकेंड बिल्डांस रोमान एंड थर्ड इज रोमांटिक. रोमांस से आपको पता ही चल गया होगा दैट इट वाज द लव बिटवीन रॉचेस्टर एंड जेन. बट ये जो लव है इट वाज प्रीवियसली अ कार्नल प्लेजर, मतलब फिजिकल अट्रैक्शन. बट एज द स्टोरी प्रोसीड्स एंड इट एंड्स एट द मोमेंट व्हेन इट एंड्स एट द वेरी एंड, इट एक्चुअली बिकम्स अ लव विच इज़ स्पिरिचुअल. और ये ऐसा एक बॉन्ड क्रिएट होता है इन दोनों में दैट नथिंग कुड स्नैप देम. कुछ भी अब इन दोनों को एक दूसरे से अलग नहीं कर पाएंगे. सिर्फ यही नहीं, हम जब जेन एयर पढ़ते हैं तब हमको मतलब वो जो पहला प्यार का जो पहला एहसास होता है वो हमें पता चलता है. लाइक जेन फॉल्स इन लव फॉर द फर्स्ट टाइम इन अ लाइफ एंड इट इज़ थ्रू हर दैट वी अंडरस्टैंड दैट falling in love for the first time in your life, it's so beautiful and it is so emotional as well. सिर्फ यही नहीं, हम देखते हैं कि ये दोनों कैरेक्टर जब एक दूसरे को छोड़ के जाते हैं तो इनके लिए मतलब सर्वाइव करना कितना मुश्किल हो जाता है. एंड इट्स ट्रूली वेरी इमोशनल, इट्स ट्रूली वेरी हार्ट ब्रेकिंग. द सेकेंड जॉनर इज़ बिल्डन्स रोमान. बिल्डन्स रोमान का मतलब जो प्रोटैगनिस्ट है जेन, उसकी लाइफ फ्रॉम द वेरी बिगिनिंग ऑफ अर लाइफ टू हर टीनेज और एडल्ट एज. सो हम देखते हैं कि जेन की हम लाइफ को देखते हैं फ्रॉम 3 डिफरेंट एजेस, फ्रॉम हर चाइल्डहुड, टीनेज एंड एडल्ट, जिसके बारे में मैंने पहले ही बताया एट द वेरी बिगिनिंग ऑफ द वीडियो. So that is all about Bildun's roman. Lastly comes Gothic. Gothic मतलब incorporation of ghost, spirits and other supernatural entities. So इस स्टोरी में भी हम देखते हैं कि there are presence of gloominess और कहीं ना कहीं लगता है कि शायद ये स्टोरी haunted है या फिर भूत प्रेत का साया है. So that is all about Gothic. And Gothic as a genre was very famous back in Victorian age. If like there were a number of stories back, like Carmilla, then comes the Women in White. There are a number of stories related to Gothic, and it's truly very fascinating. At least I just love Gothic a lot. Okay, so that's all for today, guys. I hope you liked the video. If you did, please give a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and I'll be meeting you in the next video, that is the next part of the story. So till then, stay